Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on importing geometry into MassMotion. We'll start by creating a new project. And in most cases, your MassMotion projects will be relying on geometry which is being defined in some other design program, whether it's something like Revit for BIM data, or AutoCAD, or 3D Studio Max, or Maya. There are lots of ways of getting your geometry into MassMotion and making use of it as a crowd simulator. So the first step is to go to the Scene tab and click on the Geometry Import button so you can import some reference geometry. And for this example, we'll import some IFC geometry which has been exported from Revit. And this geometry is available in the examples folder that came with the installation of MassMotion. So airport test massmotion2.ifc, and we'll click on this to open it. And once that geometry has been imported, we'll see a few things that have happened here. One is that there are a whole set of objects which you can see here in the scene, and also over here in the left view, in the list view on the left. And also that all of that geometry has been placed in a collection called a reference model, and that entire reference model can be adjusted in terms of its scale and its rotation and position in the scene, so that you can continuously make the same sorts of adjustments to subsequent imports that you might make from your design CAD package. So here we have the geometry for our airport, and very simple, small, regional style airport with a curb geometry, a curb out here. We've got a few gates back here, a check-in area, a baggage claim area, and an upstairs waiting area, and even some security screening that might go on in here. So the first thing that we need to do is convert the geometry that we're interested in into MassMotion objects and not just this reference geometry. So there's a few different ways of doing that. One is that you can go in and you can right click on this wall, for example, and say I'd like to use that to generate a barrier, because a wall will be something that we don't want the agents to be able to walk through. And that's pretty much the technique that you would use for converting geometry which is imported from something like AutoCAD or from Maya or SketchUp or what have you. It will come in as fairly dumb three-dimensional geometry, and you can do it to multiple objects at the same time. But the nice thing about geometry, which comes in an IFC file from a rich data format like Revit, is that you can actually select the geometry, and if you look here in the list, you can actually see that as MassMotion has brought it in, it's recognized that some of these things are IFC spaces or furnishing elements or walls or doorways. And because of that, we can select all of this geometry, right click on it and say use to generate auto. And now MassMotion is going to make the best guess that it can about the IFC type that has been imported. And as we can see here, it has now automatically converted all of our walls. It's picked up the staircases. It's turned the doorways into links from the curb into the vestibules, and then from the vestibules into the interior areas of the airport. So that's great. The issue is that usually you don't get a perfect conversion from one side to the other. So for example, MassMotion wasn't really sure what to do with these baggage carousels. That's fine, because that's not really a standard type. So what we're going to do is say, right, let's use those as barriers. The other thing which I know from experience doesn't come in properly because of the way they were defined is these escalators. So we can select those two escalators there. And there's also another pair of them over here. And now we can say, right, let's turn those into escalators. So that's all very well. And now we've got most of the geometry that we want converted in the way that we want it. And we still have a bunch of reference geometry that we're probably not going to make use of. We're not actually interested in the curtain walls or these floor slabs. So we'll just mark those as used. MassMotion will hide them for us. And now we can see here's our pretty clean MassMotion model. These objects here, the metal detectors and X-ray machines, that's fine. We'll just turn those into barriers as well. And now we have a pretty well completed MassMotion model. But there's still a few things to keep your eye on when these things happen. So for example, this piece of geometry has come in. It doesn't seem to have any relationship to anything. MassMotion has turned it into a wall because that's what the IFC said it was, but we don't really need that, so we'll just delete it. Likewise, there's this piece of wall which was defined and has come in here, which is blocking up our escalators and our stairs, which will clearly be a problem, so we'll delete that as well. And then there's another thing which has happened in here which is a bit more subtle. The way that the escalator geometry was defined, it comes up and meets the floor geometry, butts it almost perfectly, which is almost correct but not quite. We can see from the stair here, which is fully formed and well formed, that to have this active green color on the end of these escalators, we're actually going to need to make them overlap a little bit with the floor. And to do that, do a batch edit where we select both of these things. And what we'll do is, instead of moving the object itself, we'll go in and we will click on the Vertex selection mode. You can see the little blue dots that show up there. And then we're going to just move those out until our lines go green. And there they are. So now we have well-formed escalator geometry. And the same thing will have happened over here. And you can use Shift and Control as modifier keys for your selection state, where Shift always adds things and Option acts as a toggle, and Control acts as a toggle and Control Shift deselects. So we'll go to Vertex selection mode here and select those. And we'll just move them until our lines go green. And now we have a fully formed set of geometry from our IFC import. You may find, depending on the quality of your input geometry, whether it's coming in as an IFC or from SketchUp or something like that, you have to do more or less work on the conversion and cleanup of the geometry. But generally speaking, especially when it comes to IFC geometry, you can expect to get pretty good conformance between the source geometry and the geometry when you bring it into MassMotion. Thank you very much.